Blizzard quietly fixed the new player experience, making WoW great again. I've talked a little bit about the leveling experience and how it's kind of broken, and Blizzard's solution to that seemed to be, oh, let's just create a WoW a boost service, right? Just boost people past the leveling experience, and I think that's the wrong way to do it. But has Blizzard been fixing the level experience? Let's see what Alkaline has to say.
What's good, gamers? Aquilon here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. In today's video, we're talking about
the
new
grind
player experience of World of Warcraft, and very specifically talking about this because yesterday during the live stream over on Twitch, by the way, you can join that.
I know a lot of you probably in chat are thinking, oh, why do we care about the leveling experience? I think it matters a lot for the health of the game. The health of the game needs, you need new players, you need new people coming in. And if the leveling experience sucks, if the new player experience sucks, you're just going to be a game that's slowly dying because it's not going to just survive on us, retail Andes or classic Andes that just, suffocate ourselves by playing this game nonstop. We need new blood, and that means the leveling experience has to be good.
So in the description down below. Someone asked about this. We basically started having
level
a
new Fox Boy to check it out.
The whole chat, obviously, everyone had opinions on this, but everyone sort of agrees that the new player experience for World of Warcraft is a bit of a dud. It's really difficult for a new player to get into World of Warcraft. We just recently got some incredible numbers from Ballia's video that basically says that there's over 7 million players in World of Warcraft. Now, to be clear, we don't know if that is for Classic, Season of Discovery, or if that is for retail, but my guess would be that it certainly will translate into either, and I also don't think Blizzard makes any real distinction. It's quite clear.
There's also a lot of people that you saw the Classic and retail Andes fighting in the chats about is this how much of that 7 plus million is retail versus Classic? I'll tell you what, spoiler alert, I think the majority of people play both. Yeah, I think the majority of the people, just bounce between both depending on where there's content at. A lot of people playing Season 3 right now, and then when Season 4 starts in retail, they'll jump back to that, and they'll go back and forth. So I don't think it matters where the subs are. I just think that it's good that there's that many subs.
Clear to me, and if you allow me a little bit of a tangent, it's clear to me that Classic is no longer just an experiment from Blizzard's perspective.
No, definitely
it is now a viable game mode. It's part of the World of Warcraft universe.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely see Blizzard sort of trying to implement the Classic system, so the system of bringing old expansions back in their actual form, eventually maybe being tied into something like Chromie Time once they're done with it. And the reason I'm saying this just very quickly, as I said, allow me a little bit of a tangent, is Cataclysm Classic now being announced and also being worked on and soon will be released. Yeah. I have always said, literally since the first announcement of Classic WoW being Classic WoW,
I personally don't think Classic's going to do much in terms of I think Season of Discovery is where Classic's at now. That is going to be Classic WoW going forward, and all these re-releases of expansions is just going to be like a hype and then a dud after.
The Cataclysm they should stop before Cataclysm. The thing is, when people think about the Classic WoW experience, what they're looking for is that Classic experience, the experience of, the super hardcore world, the heavy RPG elements that used to exist in the earliest versions of World of Warcraft. That is what they like, and it shows when Season of Discovery was decided to be placed, like Blizzard chose to place it in Classic, Vanilla Classic, rather than in Wrath of the Lich King, where they would have far more time, far more levels that they could go with,
and more resources,
far more things that they could ultimately do.
Yeah.
But Classic seems to be the only one, or Classic seems to be the only one that is truly successful. I remember people playing the crap out of Classic. And then when TBC came out, people played it for a little bit, but a lot of people almost instantly went back to Classic and just kept replaying Classic. And then Wrath came out, and Wrath was actually a bit more of a dud almost, because yes, it was somewhat successful, and yes, everyone wanted to play it again because, people missed the old days and nostalgia is there. But again, people very quickly migrated back to original Classic. And I don't think it's because the gameplay is necessarily superior to that of Wrath of the Lich King. I think, broadly speaking, most people agree. Wrath of the Lich King was really when World of Warcraft hit its perfection stride. In terms of gameplay, classes were a lot more fleshed out. The world felt a lot better. Leveling was a lot more streamlined than it ever was before, even though
Yeah,
PvC.
I think it depends too what part of the game you play. I do think like PvP and everything else. I feel like Mists of Pandaria was a peaked in a lot of ways for WoW too. There was really good raid content in Mists. There was really good PvP content in Mists. I feel like classes were in a decent spot in that expansion too. I actually liked how classes worked back then. But Mists got a bad rap because of Kung Fu Panda and shit, and a lot of people never played it. But overall, honestly, Mist was a good expansion. I liked it. That for me, that was the end of a lot of like WoW in its glory days. Mist was probably the last expansion that like I got in, leveled up with all my friends. We bought the expansion the night of, played it at midnight, all that shit. We went to a store and actually bought the box, like all that stuff. And then after that, it kind of trickled down. Yeah, Mop was my favorite expansion. I feel like a lot of people who actually played it will say that. There was a lot of good things out of Mop, but it never got a fair chance.
Already did a lot of work around streamlining it, it wouldn't be until Wrath that you truly had a streamlined and pretty fun experience that wasn't just, very, very
It was
oppressive.
popular in
And yet
China.
it turns
Yeah,
out
yes.
that, yeah, people don't care, right? They want the very oppressive, very difficult leveling experience in Classic. And even though Season of Discovery does make leveling easier in terms of catching up, people still prefer the old world, right? So Cataclysm as a classic experiment has never made sense to me. Because once you get into Cataclysm, you are starting to enter what we could probably
Modern
refer
WoW.
to as the modern era
Yeah.
of World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, classic gameplay was very different to today, but it was already very similar to what we have today in terms of how the classes are designed, how the talent systems work.
True.
Talent trees were massively condensed. At that point, leveling was made a lot easier than it was even in Wrath. The world was a lot more as you would expect it to be today. So the only thing I can think of with Cataclysm is twofold. So the one reason is Blizzard have something up their sleeve with the cut content of Cataclysm, and eventually they want to do something similar to Season of Discovery.
Yeah, they wanted
only
to add
this
stuff
time
to
sort
it.
of like maybe the reformation of Cataclysm, and that could be super successful. Imagine if after like a year of Cataclysm Classic being out, Blizzard announces the reformation patch, and this is
The
a patch
Healing of
where all of that
Azeroth.
cut content, because remember, Cataclysm is one of the expansions with the most cut content in the game ever. Entire
Really?
zones, entire raids,
I didn't know
entire
that.
dungeons were cut from the expansion because Blizzard just didn't have the time to put it in there. So
I knew that about WoD, but I knew WoD had an entire, raid patch cut, a ton of stuff cut out, and they just decided to jump to Legion development. But I didn't know they did in Kata too. Kata Baby went for the first tier as a complete noob, completed the first. Nice. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't. Today, kind of caring, humble, wholesome sir. Good. How are you, pub man? How's it going? Yeah, I didn't know that Kata had a whole tier cut out. Cut stuff actually turned into Dragonflight. You know what, J-Mal, that makes sense. That makes sense that they waited and so it was dragon content. Maybe Neltharian's Lair could have been cut content for all we know. That could have been it.
Blizzard wanted to put all of that stuff in. I think a
mean,
lot of
it's
people,
all
myself
Kata
included, would go
storylines.
back and play it a little. But it doesn't make sense on the
Welcome in,
whole
man.
if you think about it. And if after this they announce Mist of Pandaria, that's when you can know I am right, and this is actually where Blizzard is trying to go. They want eventually Chromie time to be exactly that. You go to Chromie, you talk to Chromie, you say, hey, I want to go back to Cataclysm, or I want to go back to Classic Vanilla, and Chromie sends you back, and it is actually back, right? So you are in that old world. You have the
Transforms
old spout.
you to the
have
classic version?
everything old,
Interesting.
and the game saves your progression in between the different phases.
Oh, wow.
So, you can level at your heart's content. Basically, like, think of it as
That'd kinda be cool.
7 or 8 games inside a single game. So now it is possible for a new player to really experience the old world as it was meant to be played, rather than having to, fumble around with, oh, I'll install Classic WoW, but I also want to install TBC and I also want to install Wrath. Rather than having all of these different versions, it will pretty much all be installed in your World of Warcraft experience and will be part of that experience. I think that could be
Interesting.
a good thing. think a
Yeah.
lot of people would love that. Tangent over, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to specifically talk about the new player experience in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So let's examine the new player experience as it exists right now.
Which to me is the most important thing. That's the most important thing is the new player experience in retail. You say, Patrick, you're saying I want new stuff, not old. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm a retail Andy. I play retail. I'm excited for the War Within and the World Soul Saga and everything that's coming. And I think those have to be hits for WoW to be truly healthy. And I think it's going to be. I'm very excited for it. I think, Metzin's writing the storyline. I think they've got their teams together correctly. The content, hopefully, is going to be good. I think all of it is looking promising right now. But yes, the leveling experience is important for new players. You can't tell a new player, come play WoW, do Classic first, and then do... That doesn't make... They're two different games. It's going to break their... They're not going to know what the hell's going on. They need to join retail, especially if they're a new player. They need to be able to level up and have a good experience leveling up. So that's why this matters so much.
And then I'll tell you why I think Blizzard has been thinking ahead, and very cleverly so. Cleverly, is that the right word? I don't know. But they've been very intelligent in the way that they've designed Dragonflight. All right, the new player experience currently starts you off on the island, you finish the island, and then you get dumped into Battle for Azeroth. The problem with being dumped into Battle for Azeroth, you are pretty much immediately referred to as champion by characters that you have no collection of. You have no memory of these characters. You've never played with these characters.
The lore is
but all of
broken
these
for
characters are referring to you as champion and talking to you about things that you have done that you obviously have not done. You're a brand new player. So this can be a very jarring experience if you're someone that sort of maybe don't even necessarily care about the story, but you care about the story enough that because stories do build worlds and stories are important to people, it will be jarring enough that some people may just...
Lore is very important for immersion. Even if people don't realize it or people say, I don't care about the lore. No, you kind of do. You just don't realize it. Subconsciously, the lore makes you more motivated to play. The lore is important for immersion, and immersion is important for having a good time. You want to kind of leave the real world behind and just play some WoW, and that's what good immersion does.
Just decide to opt out.
There is too much content, Sickbee. That is the hard part.
To the actual zone, and if you're Alliance, you get thrown in prison for reasons. Because you're a new player, you have no idea what these reasons are. But for some reason, this lady that was with you got you thrown in jail. And
Why
you
her?
have no idea what this actually is. If you're on the Horde side of things, you get to meet the Zunlari trolls and a king called Rushdakhan, and people are referring to you as things, and you're just like, what the hell is this? I don't know any of these people, right? That's kind of the problem right now with the new player experience in World of Warcraft, and it doesn't get better from there, because as soon as you're done with Battle for Azeroth, you get dumped into Dragonflight.
Nice.
You
get to skip Shadowlands.
Shadowlands. Now,
hey, that's not a bad thing. That's skipping Shadowlands, nice.
You're in Dragonflight, and, well, that doesn't make any sense either, because you don't know anything about the dragons. What is the Dragon Isles anyways? And it isn't... This is where things really, I think, start to get better, but because you've had such a terrible experience with Battle for Azeroth, that experience isn't going to get any better with Dragonflight, because you're already dealing with massive confusions around just about everything.
Right.
So, of course, the conversation has been...
I do wonder, though, without Shadowlands, right, as much as I shit on it, without Shadowlands, what the hell does Anduin look like to you in the World Soul Saga when that starts? You're just going to see this guy who's, like, emotionally destroyed, and you're not going to understand why he is the way he is. Just be like, man, this guy's a depression. Just a ball of depression walking around for no reason. You have no backstory to him whatsoever. You're just going to be like, okay, yeah, this guy's clearly sad, not sure why. Again, immersion breaking.
And also for myself for a while now, that Blizzard does need a new player experience.
I think the last Titan might be a reboot too,
what
Patrick.
Blizzard should do is they should go through all of the old world, literally every single zone, every single storyline. Pick the main stories that you think players require. So these are the storylines that need to be known by every single player, so the players can have a unified knowledge base at max level of everything that's happened in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
These things are important. Humans in our civilization building, in our tribe building, we require unified stories. Everyone needs to be able to agree on what the history of something is in order to feel a part of something.
Yeah.
Right now, that is not something that the overwhelming majority of the WoW player base will be able to say, especially if they're somewhat new players, if they manage to slog through the new player experience.
Yeah. Here's the main thing. This is why it might be fixed very soon. Is actually you say Shadowlands main story is good. It's good as an opinion, I guess. I don't like what they did with the Lich King lore and everything in Shadowlands, but the leveling experience, maybe the zones were cool. Learning some of the new stuff about some of these new races was kind of cool. But here's the thing: raids tell the main stories for a lot of expansions. Right? You learn a lot of the storylines through going to a raid. And right now, if you put a new player in, they're not going to find a group for a raid back in BC. That's the problem. That's why they can't learn the story. They can't figure out a lot of the stuff that's going on. But that might be fixed with the new, AI dungeons, right? So what you might be able to do, and what Blizzard might be planning, is if you have a new player who levels through all the old expansions, just getting the really core parts of what the expansion is about, like very short snippets of those expansions, but you get the main stories. The way they can do that is you go to the raid and it's an AI raid, right? You're technically only the real person in the raid, but the AI is good enough that they got tanks and healers and everything in there, and you can just go through it in a story mode basically, just to get the story. That's part of the quest. Go to ICC, kill the Lich King. Okay, man, I'm going. You don't have to form up a raid or anything. You just go in. You got your AI buddies with you. You go through the raid and you experience that. You level while you're going through it, and then you move on to the next expansion. That's probably the best way to do it. And maybe they have that planned with all the AI tech they got going on and the AI dungeons. I forgot what they call them, friend dungeons or whatever they are. Probably something friendly because that's what Dragonflight's been all about. But I think using AI tech to allow a new player to go into an old raid and experience that storyline, because that's where the stories are really told, is in a raid, that might be the solution to all this.
They won't know half of the stories that is actually out there. But this is where things change. And this is where, a lot of people in stream were like, well,
follower
Blizzard
dungeons,
just needs
that's what they call them, yeah.
like,
Follower raids,
do
yeah.
everything from scratch. And I agreed to some extent. But then I started thinking about Dragonflight, the expansion, the Dragon Isles. And I specifically started thinking about the new, like the first time you get into the Dragon Isles and the place that you get there.
Full text, thank you for the follow, man. Welcome to our Scourge.
The way they refer to you. And this was actually very strange as an existing player. And that's how it came to me, was the dragons there refer to, like, they talk to me as if they do not know me. Even Alex Straza at one point talks to you as if she has no idea who you are.
It's true.
Right? And then after a bit of help, that's when she starts referring to you as champion, and that's where you get back into
they probably did it for the new players.
Champion, right? I have a big penis.
Right.
But everyone refers to you like you're completely unknown. In fact, they don't even trust you necessarily all that much at the start. You have that whole quest line where you have to go fill in your name in a book, and you have to choose your title and all the things that you think about yourself, so that they can know who you are because you're brand new here. And then they send you off to go do seemingly very random small things at first, and it sort of ramps up slowly over time. But as you go through the early zones of the Dragon Isles, or the early periods of the zone in Dragon Isles, you slowly but surely get introduced to most of the dragon flights. There is actually some discussion about all
the whole lighting of the torches and all that shit. That's basically an introduction to each flight. He's right.
Lore in World of Warcraft, some harkenings back to the older days of World of Warcraft, and all of this is phenomenal if you're a new player, because as a new player, this will be your next new player experience. Right? You will come into the Dragon Isles not knowing anything about these isles, and they seemingly don't know anything about you either, which is helpful, right? Because you don't know them, they don't know you. It's time to get to know each other. But then as you move through and you get introduced to each of the dragon flights, you get introduced to a lot of the old lore of World of Warcraft. Obviously not all. There's no shot that a single expansion could tell you all the lore in World of Warcraft, but it introduces you to things like the Titans. It introduces you to things like the Void Lords and the Shadow. You get some introductions to at least mentions of the light and the cosmological forces.
You also get introductions to Cataclysm and everything else that happened before. That is true. Yeah, I never thought about it, but he's right. the Dragon Isles and everything else does hint a lot at previous storylines. So maybe they're planning on using Dragonflight as a starting point for the leveling experience going forward into the War Within. That could certainly be it.
There's books all around and pages that you can read that discusses really
think
some
about
of
that
the
one, Moishi.
very early lore of World of Warcraft. Think about Tyr's books and Odin's books that you find very early on in the game. All of this is a phenomenal new player experience. Do yourself a favor if you don't agree with me. Make a new character and go into the Dragon Isles fresh, right? And just pay attention to the way the story plays out. It is actually quite amazing to see the story play out in front of you and realize that you're not the champion at this point, which is somewhat jarring, but also at the same time really does make a lot of sense. You're not the champion.
I wish I
and
was
as a new player, this is what your experience will look like. You will finish the island, and then you'll be dumped into Dragon Isles. You will finish the Dragon Isle expansion, and then only will you move into the War Within.
Right.
Now, it's not yet a perfect new player experience, but I think it's good enough. I think as a new player,
yeah,
that is the best experience you can hope for a game that's almost 20 years old.
Yeah, he's right, though. I mean, if you do the whole Dragonflight experience, right, as a new player, imagine you're getting introduced to these characters, you're starting out as a lowbie, and yeah, you become champion towards the end. You will learn everything going into the War Within, right? Because you're going to learn about Xal'atath. She gets, even though we've known about her before Dragonflight, you get introduced more to her. All that happens here, so you don't have to play Legion to learn that stuff. You get introduced to Iridikron, who's basically kicking off a lot of the War Within stuff. So yeah, you will know everything going into the War Within, except, as I said before, why is Anduin crying? You're not going to know that. You're just going to have a bad opinion about him probably and wonder why he's so emotional. But other than that, yeah, it is a good introduction to the game. A lot of the old storylines are talked about through the tier quest lines and stuff, and then you get introduced to what the whole plot line is for the War Within.
There needs to be some changes, though. Small changes, but some changes need to happen. I would like to see an announcement from Blizzard that now with follower dungeons being an actual thing, maybe even follower raids becoming a thing for some of the older raids. But what I would love to see from Blizzard is all of the patches being unified into the leveling experience for a new player. So you don't just do the main storyline of the expansion and then move into the War Within. No, you have to finish all of the quests, the story quests specifically, for the main campaign of the Dragon Isles. Then you do all of the patches for the main campaigns, right? And then only, once you're done with everything right up until the last, that's when you move into the War Within. Because the patches really do a massive job
do your
of
AI
informing
raid
you about
and
the
then move
world
on.
and the story and everything else that you need to know. And with the technology now, with follower dungeons and hopefully follower raids, it is possible to do that without making players wait hours and hours and hours to get dungeons together, hours and hours and hours to, well, maybe never even get a raid together. And that goes into the War Within. And then hopefully the War Within is also built in such a way that it can be a permanently playthrough expansion that really slots in nicely for a new player that wants to experience World of Warcraft. Now you may be asking, Akalon, but what then happens to the old zones of World of Warcraft? Well, my friends, I think the old zones are going to become new zones, and I think Midnight is really the first piece of evidence we have of that. We know that Midnight is going back to Quel'Thalas, to the old world. There might be some new zones that's introduced there, but I do think Blizzard will slowly but surely, over the course of the next, 20 years,
this is all going to get revamped.
The old
this is all going to get revamped
in a
Midnight.
way that most of the old zones become new zones.
Yeah.
Newly updated, newly reworked. We know that Blizzard has
They've talked about it before.
technology for it now.
That this revamp is not just going to be a revamp, it's going to be a rebuild. So they're going to redo all of Quel'Thalas, Silver Moon, all that stuff's getting rebuilt, but they're going to have to add new quests and stuff to make that stuff viable, right? You're rebuilding all these old zones for no reason. The Zandalari Empire, hopefully that gets rebuilt, all that stuff. Not Zandalari, sorry. The Amani Trolls and all that. It should get rebuilt, but you got to give us new quests, new reasons to go there. And I hope they're going to do all that. And that'll, yes, also contribute to the leveling experience and everything else.
They're employing that in Cataclysm with the upscaling worldwide. So it's going to become easier for Blizzard over time to revamp entire dungeons, revamp entire zones, remake entire zones, and then maybe make all of the old zones make them more max level player experiences. So when you're at max level, there's things for you to do in there. There's gameplay to partake in there. It's a fun experiment and a fun
I think you're right,
experience for
Patrick.
everyone. And there's so much that so many zones in World of Warcraft that is basically forgotten, because during the original experience of World of Warcraft, these zones weren't super important to the story, so they have very sparse storytelling within them. And then obviously you do have phenomenal zones with phenomenal storytelling in them. But this is a chance for Blizzard to really redo all of that. And then you couple that with talking to Chromie and you being sent to the actual classic experience of World of Warcraft. And
another Death Knight.
You've preserved the
Tundra, thank you for the sub, man. Death Knight of our Scourge. No, I didn't start early. I started at the same time as I always do. Yeah, I don't know if the clock's changed in Australia. Fun Viking, thank you for the sub as well, man. If I missed your call out before, thank you. I do appreciate that. And as everything he's saying, the revamp of the world, very important. Yes, 100%.
Past in a capsule-like form that anyone can go back and enjoy. But you've also crafted a brand new experience for brand new players to really enjoy.
17 months.
And now you have the perk of hindsight. You know where you went wrong in the original experience. You know that Cataclysm was a big dud in terms of killing off the lore. So you don't do that again. You don't make that mistake again. You leave those zones and you
get to revamp the content
that they will always flow one
fixing
into
your mistakes.
the other until you get to the max level stuff. I wanted to share that with you guys because it was a pretty lively discussion on the stream and it's an interesting topic. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. If you didn't, dislike. $1 a month gets you access to Patreon. You get nothing on Patreon
dislike.
except
Man
for the
made a
fact
great
that you
video.
keep this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you shit that you do not need. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other, be good to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.
Oh, why'd it get laggy there? Look, the whole thing about a revamp, we call it a revamp, Patrick, but I do think it's basically a reboot at this point. It's not going to be just like fix a zone and keep it the way it was. They're like reconstructing content completely. It's going to be a complete reconstruction, whether we ever get like a WoW 2 officially or kind of in the background they do it, continent by continent, zone by zone. We are going to get a refresh of the game leading into the Last Titan or at post-Last Titan, that's for sure. And I think the game needs it. I think it'll be good for the game. And I'm looking forward to everything that's coming in the future right now. I think the future is bright.